My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 30 years old, living in Boston and working as a senior analyst in private equity. People like to say I'm the calm one, the fixer, when everything in the family falls apart. And honestly, they're not wrong. I was the one who paid off my sister's rent after she blew her paycheck on designer bags. The one who absorbed nearly $75,000, 0 cents, of debt when my dad lost big trying to flip houses without a plan. The one who quietly picked up my mom's endless medical bills, even though she never once asked if I needed help too. I used to tell myself, family is family, you do whatever it takes. But lately, that loyalty had started to feel more like chains. Last Friday, I got a message from my mom. Dear Claire, can you come to the house at 7 tonight? We have a little surprise for you. My heart sank. A surprise from my mom, Janet, usually came with strings attached. The last surprise ended with me co-signing a loan to cover my sister's second failed bakery. I sat in my car outside the familiar gray colonial house, the one I had helped remodel after the roof caved in 5 years ago. Of course, the deed was still in my parents' name. Through the big bay window, I saw shadows moving, heard bursts of laughter. I inhaled sharply, adjusted my scarf, and rang the bell. Mom opened the door, her smile wide and brittle, her perfume almost dizzying. Surprise, she chirped, pulling me inside. The living room was crowded with relatives I hadn't seen since my cousin's wedding 3 years ago. Uncle Steve, Aunt Marie, even my cousin Emily, the one who only showed up when someone was handing out checks. Everyone yelled, "Happy early birthday, Claire!" I laughed, playing along. Wow, you guys really surprised me, I said, though my gut twisted. Mom ushered me to the couch, where Dad handed me a glass of something green. Your favorite apple martini, he said proudly. I hated apple martinis, always had. Sit, sweetie, Mom said sweetly, eyes flicking toward a sleek black folder resting on the side table. I sat and glimpsed the first page. Asset transfer authorization, Claire Donovan. Inheritance trust. I stiffened. What's this? I asked carefully. Just boring paperwork, honey, Mom said quickly, patting my hand. Tonight is about you. We'll go over it later. I smiled thinly, but my fingers were already sliding the folder into my lap. Actually, I'd like to look it over now, if that's all right. The room froze. My dad cleared his throat awkwardly and lifted his glass. A toast. To Claire, the brightest star of the family, he said, his voice a little too quick. I flipped to the first page. My eyes caught one glaring line. I, Claire Elizabeth Donovan, hereby relinquish all rights to the Donovan Family Inheritance Trust. I looked up slowly. Mom, what is this? Janet forced a too-wide smile. Just a small formality, sweetheart, nothing serious. Or taxes? I asked evenly. Or is this just a convenient way to shift everything under your control without telling me? Before she could answer, my sister Emily chimed in. Come on, Claire, it's already been agreed on, just sign it. I laughed, but the sound was brittle. So this is the real reason behind the birthday party? The smile vanished from my mother's face. Don't cause a scene, she hissed, glancing nervously at the crowd. Everyone's here. I shut the folder firmly, letting it rest on my lap. Then let them hear the truth. I scanned the room, faces I thought I knew, now looking like strangers. My heart pounded against my ribs. No one spoke. Everyone's gaze fell to the floor, the ceiling, anywhere but me. Emily played with her phone. My mother kept the frozen smile, but I could see the panic creeping in. Even my dad looked ashamed. Dad? Mom, I said quietly. If this was truly about Grandma's estate, why not just be honest? Why trap me? Janet moved closer, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Darling, you always overthink things. We just thought it'd be easier. You don't need the money. You have a great job, a good life. I gave a hollow laugh. Easier for who, exactly? Because this feels a lot like a setup. A gravelly voice interrupted from the corner. Claire, that's enough. It was my uncle, Steve. You're making everyone uncomfortable. I turned to him sharply, my voice clear and steady. Really? I'm making everyone uncomfortable? Not the people trying to steal what wasn't theirs? Then I guess I should apologize, I said calmly, for not signing away the last real bond I have with my grandmother. At that moment, Sophie, my best friend, stepped up beside me. I hadn't even noticed she was there, but now she stood firm, eyes locked onto mine, solid as ever. Claire, my mom snapped, the fake smile fully crumbling now. Don't turn this into a spectacle. I stood, lifting the black folder between two fingers like it was something dirty. The thing is, Mom, I said, voice clear, you wrote the play, I just refused to act out your scene. I crossed the room to the dining table and laid the folder down, almost ceremonially. Then I turned to face them all, faces that once meant home, now strangers cloaked in silence. Grandma Elizabeth left everything to me, I said, because she knew. She saw what tonight has proven beyond any doubt. Silence gripped the room. I turned to Sophie. Can we go? I asked quietly. She nodded and we made for the door. But just as my hand brushed the knob, my mother's voice rang out. If you leave without signing, Claire, there will be consequences. I paused, then turned to meet her glare head-on. I've lived with consequences my whole life, Mom, I said. Now I choose clarity. And I walked out. Not crying, not shouting, just... Sophie's car hummed softly as we pulled away, Boston streets shimmering under the streetlights. You okay? She asked quietly. Not yet, I admitted, watching the familiar skyline blur past the window. But I will be. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Sophie said, almost like a whisper, Your grandma must have seen this coming. I nodded slowly. Yeah. She left more than money, I think. Maybe a letter. Maybe something bigger. Sophie squeezed my hand gently. Then, it's your turn, now. We stopped at a small lakeside cafe, the water catching the golden glow of the streetlights like molten glass. Sophie set down 2 mugs of steaming tea, while I pulled the folder back out of my bag. This time, I flipped through every page slowly, my hands steady. It wasn't just an inheritance waiver. There were attachments too. Dangerous ones. A temporary power of attorney. A full financial reallocation, shifting nearly everything into a trust managed by my parents. Sophie leaned closer, her face tightening. They weren't planning to leave you anything. I nodded grimly. And worse, they were planning to use my name to make it look legitimate. If you're as ready as I am to uncover what my grandmother left behind and what my family tried to erase, make sure you subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. Sophie bit her lip thoughtfully. What about your grandmother's lawyer? You said you were thinking of reaching out. I pulled out my phone and reopened the last message Grandma Elizabeth had sent me just a week before she passed. Claire, if things ever seem unclear, go see my attorney, Mr. William Cross. I left some things for you. The next morning, I called his office the second they opened. A professional-sounding assistant answered and scheduled me for a 10 o'clock IAM appointment. I arrived 10 minutes early, nerves tightening in my chest. The office was inside a stately red brick building near Boston Common with tall windows looking out over the park. William Cross was a calm, silver-haired man, probably in his early 60s, with kind eyes and a precise way of speaking. He shook my hand firmly and ushered me into a warmly lit room lined with leather-bound law books. On the polished desk sat a thick envelope, sealed carefully, with my name written in my grandmother's familiar handwriting. Mrs. Donovan left a private video recording for you, Mr. Cross said, pulling a small USB drive from a drawer. There are also original documents tied to the trust your family is now attempting to restructure. I swallowed hard. The video, can I watch it now? He nodded and plugged the USB into his computer. The screen glowed to life, and her voice filled the room. Slow, gentle, but still razor sharp. Bear quick, Claire. If you're seeing this, then everything is happening as I feared. I leaned forward, heart hammering. You have always been generous, never asking for anything. That's why I chose you. I saw how others used family as an excuse for entitlement and manipulation. I wanted better for you. My throat tightened. On screen, the terms of the original trust appeared, crystal clear. If any heir was coerced into relinquishing rights, the assets would bypass the family entirely and be donated to charities. Your family is unaware of this clause, Mr. Cross said gently, but if you wish, I can activate it today. In the video? I asked quietly. He handed me a fresh USB. There's one more recording, for your family. A plan formed in my mind, sharp and steady. I found Sophie waiting outside by the curb. I slid into the car and told her everything. When I mentioned the family video, she smiled wickedly. You're going to show them. I nodded, feeling a calm determination settle over me. Tonight, we're hosting a little ooh-ooh reunion. Their surprise party was about to get a twist they'd never see coming. And this time, I was the one writing the script. Once everyone arrived, I'd play the video. No arguments, no edits. And if anyone still tried anything shady, the clause that redirected everything to charity would snap into place. They had no idea they were the ones being tested now. Not me. That evening, I sent a short round of texts. Mom, I've thought it over. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. I'm inviting everyone to my apartment. I'd like to resolve this peacefully. Her reply was almost instant. Sweetheart, I knew you'd come around. We'll be there. I didn't even have to read it carefully. I knew my mother. Janet Donovan never turned down a gathering where she thought victory was on the table. Sophie and I spent the afternoon rearranging the living room. We borrowed a mini projector from her office, setting it up on a shelf across from the sofa. The blank wall would serve as the screen, clean, simple, inescapable. I placed the USB drive labeled For Claire carefully next to the laptop. My heart was pounding, but not with fear, with certainty. Tonight would change everything. Exactly at 5 p.m. the doorbell rang. My mother arrived first, wrapped in a soft cream dress, her heels tapping purposefully against the hardwood. Where's Claire Elizabeth? She called out, using my full name the way she always did when she wanted control. I invited you, I said calmly, stepping into view. Please, come in. My father followed, looking tense. Then Uncle Steve, Aunt Marie, and finally Emily. My sister, visibly jittery, glancing around like a trapped rabbit. I offered them all seats without ceremony, then walked over to the projector. I have something important to share, I said, my voice low but carrying across the room. I plugged in the USB. The wall glowed to life. And there she was, Grandma Elizabeth. Her silver hair was neatly pinned back, her sharp blue eyes steady on the camera, her voice rich and warm, just like I remembered from summers spent by her side. If you're seeing this, it means Claire stood her ground, she began. I saw my mother stiffen, but she stayed silent. I've created a trust that cannot be altered. Everything belongs to Claire, the only grandchild who never demanded, never manipulated, and never broke my heart. Emily looked down at her hands. My mother shifted stiffly. My father's jaw tightened. This trust has 3 rules, Grandma continued. First, it is to be used only for personal living, housing, health care, and education. 2, Grandma's voice continued. The trust may be invested in independent ventures with no family ties. 3, it may be donated to verified charities if Claire chooses. I glanced at my mother. She wasn't angry. She was panicking. And if any family member attempts to coerce Claire into relinquishing her inheritance or sues to claim it, Grandma said, then 50% of all assets will immediately transfer to the 4 charitable organizations I named. Silence. I shut off the projector and turned back to the room. I know you planned for me to sign everything away yesterday, I said, my voice steady, but I also know now that wasn't Grandma's wish, and I'm not the naive kid you used to push around. My mother stood abruptly, her voice trembling. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Everything we did was for you. Really? I asked quietly. For me? Or because you were terrified that if I held the inheritance, you wouldn't have access to patch up your messes with my money? My father slammed his palm against the coffee table, making everyone jump. Enough, Claire, this is family, we share everything. I met his stare without flinching. I've shared enough. This time, I'm keeping what's mine. I pulled a copy of the trust conditions from an envelope and placed it carefully in the center of the table. Grandma saw this coming, I said, and if anyone here tries to undermine that trust, just remember, every action has consequences. My mother clutched her purse tighter, her face darting nervously between me and the exit. You'll regret this, Claire, she hissed. One day, you'll need us. I nodded slowly. Maybe, but today, I need something else. Respect. And I'm not trading that for any amount of money. Then I stepped toward the door and opened it wide. This meeting is over. The apartment, once buzzing with tension, was silent again. But this time, it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. On the table, the USB drive caught the soft afternoon light. It wasn't just a legal document, it was proof that Grandma Elizabeth had trusted me to protect her legacy. And myself. And if they tried to flip the board again, they would find out. I already had my next move ready. The next morning, I sat alone in the kitchen, my coffee long gone cold. The thick folder Attorney Cross had given me rested in front of me, page after page of meticulous records. Your grandmother was thorough, Mr. Cross had said when he handed it over. She documented everything, every unauthorized loan, every card opened in your name without your consent. As I flipped through the pages, bank statements, notarized transcripts, even audio recordings, I realized something. This wasn't just defense. It was a weapon. I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was telling the truth. 2 days later, I called my father. No group meeting this time. With him. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe in Brookline, the same one where he used to take me for pancakes when I was little. But today, there would be no syrupy smiles, no nostalgia, only reality. He was 10 minutes late. He strolled in with a sheepish grin. Sorry, traffic, but hey, thanks for meeting me. I gave a curt nod and gestured to the seat across from me. Without a word, I placed a thick envelope on the table between us. I didn't ask you here to reconnect, I said evenly. I asked you here to be clear. He frowned, reaching for the envelope. What's this? I pushed it toward him. Documents, evidence, loans you took under my name, cards opened by Mom, money meant for Hunter that ended up funding a condo in Miami. He chuckled nervously. You've got it all wrong, Claire. It was all for the family. Everyone does this. I stared at him. For the family? When I was 21, I worked 3 jobs to pay off that family debt while you were gambling in Atlantic City? I kept going, voice cold and clear. Do you remember when Mom called crying, saying Hunter needed surgery? I pulled $8,000 out of my account that night. I slid another page across the table. 2 hours later, the money bought Mom a great deal on a used Range Rover. Feels like he flinched. Where did you hear that? I slid over the final piece, a recording. Grandma Elizabeth had kept it. She had always known. My father leaned back, wiping his hand across his face. For the first time, he didn't look like the strong man of my childhood. He looked defeated. What do you want? He asked hoarsely. I folded my arms across my chest. Not money, not an apology, just this. Stop. He narrowed his eyes. From now on, I said, you and Mom stay out of my finances. No calls, no emergencies, no fake account mistakes. I leaned in. If anyone in this family tries anything, I'll take everything to the IRS and the Financial Crimes Unit. Every document, every recording. He opened his mouth to argue, but I raised a hand to cut him off. And one more thing, I said, voice low and final. I know you're looking for a new lawyer to challenge the trust. His eyes widened. But if you even try, half of the inheritance vanishes into charity, instantly. I gathered my folder and stood up. So, if you want to call Mom and strategize, I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder, make sure she knows she's gambling with an empty hand. Then I walked away, this time on my terms. Just know, I said, voice level, every wrong move will cost you half. He stared at me, searching my face, trying to gauge whether I really meant it. I gave a small, almost sad smile. You taught me chess, remember? Sacrifice the pawn to protect the queen. Looks like you chose the wrong piece this time. I walked out of that cafe without looking back. For the first time in years, my steps felt light. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, something they never thought I'd be brave enough to do. That Monday morning, I arrived at Attorney William Cross's office at 8:45 a.m. sharp. The family meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock, and I wanted to be first. Not out of politeness, but to double-check that everything was ready. The conference room was spotless, the projector already tested. On the long polished table, thick, hardbound documents were neatly stacked. On the large screen, the opening frame of Grandma Elizabeth's final video was frozen, her face solemn, her sharp eyes behind her wire-framed glasses. William entered carrying another thick folder. Everything's ready, he said, and all financial evidence has been printed and labeled as you asked. I nodded once. No pleasantries when they arrive. At exactly 9 o'clock IEM, the door opened. My mother, Janet, swept in first, her gray suit sharp and pressed, her heels clicking aggressively on the tile. My father, Richard, followed, wearing his trademark deep red tie, his power tie he used to call it. Emily shuffled in last, hands buried in her coat pockets, looking anywhere but at me. William greeted them briefly. Thank you for coming. Today we will watch the final message left by Mrs. Elizabeth Donovan and disclose the final terms of her estate and business holdings. My mother snorted lightly. I hope this one isn't as dramatic as that stunt you pulled at Claire's apartment. I didn't respond. I simply pressed play. The screen came to life and Grandma's voice filled the room, rich and commanding. If you're watching this, it means everything has unfolded exactly as I feared. Janet. Richard. I know everything you've done, from unauthorized withdrawals to laundering company funds through personal account. My mother's face drained of color. My father shifted uncomfortably, casting a desperate glance at William. Every report, every account, every falsified document. I watched silently as the cracks began to show. I have transferred full ownership of Donovan and Cross, the firm your father and I built, to Claire. My father's mouth dropped open. Emily stared at the floor. Claire is the only one who never used our family name as currency, Grandma said, her voice unwavering. He alone honored what it stood for. My mother bolted upright. Absolutely not, she shouted. That firm is part of my father's legacy. I stood, calmly. And now it belongs to the only one who still respects that legacy, I said. I walked to the table, placing the notarized ownership transfer papers in front of them. This is illegal, my father roared, slamming a fist down. You have rights, I said evenly, until you're forced to resign. And that process has already begun. I slid another thick file across the table. Bank statements, casino payments under false names, hotel invoices listed as conference expenses. William spoke firmly. If any interference occurs, the trust's protective clause will trigger, transferring half the assets to financial abuse recovery organizations. I turned to my mother. You used to tell me I was too sensitive. Turns out I was just too patient. My father's hand trembled as he picked up the resignation letter. If I sign this, he rasped, will you stay quiet? I met his gaze steadily. I don't want to hurt the family name. But if you try to manipulate me again, I'll bring everything to light. Richard looked at Janet for backup. She said nothing, her face pale, frozen. Finally, with a heavy, defeated sigh, he signed. I gathered the papers carefully. From now on, all shared family assets would be audited. All secondary credit cards canceled. Company housing reclaimed. Private funds frozen. Emily muttered under her breath. Claire, you're going too far. I turned toward her, my voice soft but firm. No, Emily. This should have ended years ago. Today, it's just being rewritten with the truth. The conference room door closed behind me with a soft click. No drama, no shouting. But I knew that to them, that sound was louder than any final word. And I didn't look back. I didn't need to. 2 weeks later, I officially stepped in as the new CEO of Donovan and Cross, the law firm my grandmother helped build from a tiny office in Cambridge into one of the most respected investment advisory firms in New England. And it wasn't just a title. It was a legacy reclaimed. And it was just the beginning. I stood at the edge of the stage, the lights warm against my face, the low hum of conversation buzzing through the auditorium. Rows of young faces looked up at me, some hopeful, some wary, all of them carrying invisible bruises that only those who have been hurt by the ones they trusted most could recognize. I took a slow breath. "Good afternoon," I began. "My name is Claire Donovan, and like many of you, I grew up believing that family always comes first, that loyalty was a one-way road, that love meant forgiveness, no matter how deep the cuts ran." I paused, letting the words settle. But what no one tells you is that loyalty without respect is not love. It's survival. And survival is not the same thing as living. For a moment, the room was utterly still. I spent years trying to patch holes in a ship that my family had already decided to sink. I thought that if I worked harder, loved harder, forgave faster, things would change. But sometimes, no matter how much you give, people will only take. I glanced down briefly, then back at them. I'm not here to tell you that walking away is easy. It isn't. It costs something, but sometimes staying costs even more. I told them the condensed version, about the inheritance, about the betrayals, about the fight not just to claim what was legally mine, but to reclaim what had been stolen quietly over years, my peace, my boundaries, my self-respect, and how, in the end, it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the simple truth that I didn't owe anyone my silence anymore. Afterward, a long line of students formed. Some shook my hand quietly, some hugged me tightly without asking for permission, tears in their eyes. Some simply said thank you, their voices cracking with the weight of unshed grief. Each one reminded me why I started the Elizabeth Donovan Foundation. Each one reminded me that my grandmother's legacy wasn't numbers on a balance sheet. It was this. It was whole. Later that evening, I walked alone through Boston Common, the autumn air crisp against my skin, the trees shedding their gold and crimson leaves in slow, graceful dances. I stopped at a bench near the fountain and sat down, pulling my coat tighter around me. For a long time, I had believed that healing meant mending old relationships. That to move on, I had to make peace with the people who had hurt me. But now, sitting under the stars with the city lights sparkling around me, I realized something different. Healing wasn't about them. It was about me. It was about forgiving myself for not leaving sooner, for trusting too long, for thinking I had to earn love that should have been given freely. And as I sat there, breathing in the cool night air, I smiled. A small, genuine smile. Not for anyone else. For me. A week later, I was back at the foundation office, finalizing the plans for our first official scholarship program. Sophie came in, balancing 2 coffees and a stack of paperwork. "You've been quiet lately," she teased, sliding into the seat across from me. "Just thinking," I said, smiling, "about how different everything feels." She raised an eyebrow. "Good different or scary different?" "Both," I admitted, "but mostly good." We spent the afternoon reviewing applications, laughing at typos, getting frustrated at bureaucracy, and dreaming bigger than either of us had dared a year ago. At one point, Sophie leaned back and said, "You know, if you hadn't fought back, if you hadn't chosen yourself, none of this would exist." I looked around, the modest office, the foundation growing in steady beats like a strong new heart, and nodded. "I know," I said. "And that's the thing about building your own life after losing everything you thought you needed. You find out you didn't lose anything at all. You just finally made space for something real." That night, before heading home, I added one more line to the foundation's website. You are not selfish for choosing peace. You are not ungrateful for protecting your heart. You are not wrong for letting go. Because sometimes the family you're born into will never see your worth, but you can still choose to see it yourself. And sometimes the greatest act of love isn't staying. It's walking away and building something beautiful with the pieces they tried to break. As I turned off the office lights and stepped into the cool Boston night, I felt it again. That steady, unshakable certainty. I was finally fully home. Not in a building, not in someone else's approval, but in myself. And for the first time, that was more than enough. I walked up to the podium without a long speech, just a few notes, and a truth I no longer needed to hide. My name is Claire, I began, and the first thing I want you to know is this: you are not selfish for choosing to protect yourself. The room fell silent. I continued, voice steady. It used to be my family's bottomless wallet, the responsible one. But behind the praise were midnight calls, guilt trips, and whispered threats. If you don't help, what happens to us? I gave more than money. I gave trust. Time. Years trying to patch together something called family peace. I looked down at the first row, where Emily sat quietly, offering a small, sad nod. And then I realized, I said softly, real family isn't just blood. It's who stands beside you when you dare to live as your full self. It could be a college friend, a mentor, a kind stranger. Where you getting back up for yourself. As I stepped off the stage, the room rose to its feet. Not because I was a CEO, but because I had chosen to let go and begin again. Later that night, alone in the foundation office, I pulled out my grandmother's final handwritten letter. Dear Claire, if you ever must choose between keeping your family and keeping yourself, choose yourself. Real family will never ask you to lose who you are. I folded it carefully and tucked it away. Peace wasn't something given to me. In the website, it was something I fought for and finally created. If you connected with my story, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your own heart? Share your experience in the comments. Your voice matters more than you know. If there's one lesson I can leave you with, it's this. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's survival. Real love never demands you lose who you are. Stand firm, set your boundaries, and trust that the people who truly care will never ask you to shrink just to make them comfortable. Let's support each other in choosing peace.